the way we're going to run Q&As at the end, you'll be able to put your question into the chat functionality of the WebEx, or you can raise your hand, and as you put the questions in, Dr. Taylor will respond to them. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Ms. Eustache. And again, good evening to everyone. Thank you for joining us. We understand it's a summer evening, so we don't have a voluminous presentation. However, we do think it is targeted to your inquiries around what's going to be happening with our schools as we approach the fall. So this is a very brief review of our intentional integration initiative. And again, for those who are a part of the South Orange Maplewood community, we had several large-scale events sharing this information and engaging with the community. The majority of our events had, numbers in the thousands of folks attending. And when we did webinars for the community, I believe we had more than 5,000 views. So again, this is a topic that is top of mind even as we come out of COVID. So just again, the purpose of our time today is to give you a brief review of our project, along with the pending construction that we're also excited about, talk about some of the methodology framework, and also the algorithm and the criteria, and the summary as well as the timeline. And we'll also allow some time, as Ms. Eustache said, for Q&A. So just to go back to our lives pre-COVID, I joined the district in July of 2020 and inherited a true need for our district to approach integration. And so we had several in-person opportunities for families to learn more about and to share more with us about their views on integration as a topic for our community, as well as some of the challenges that they were concerned about as families. And so you can see here, again, I won't insult you by reading to you, but we had a number of in-person events pre-COVID and also some digital opportunities and webinars during COVID last year. So we know that our intentional integration work is of the highest priority for our community. It's been an ongoing topic for many years, and even as recent as 2019, the goal of intentional integration was pushed back a year for more research and planning. We also have, again, pending construction, $160 million construction approval that we have received from our local townships, and we're now in the middle of that. So those are two huge projects, and we understand that I've had the opportunity and the pleasure of managing construction for a previous school district that was almost $70 million. And I can tell you, though we finished on time and finished ahead of schedule with our funding, there's a lot of spontaneity that construction brings. And so even though we're just beginning our phases of construction, we're already experiencing construction delays that are linked to COVID, things that are outside of our control. I won't bore you with the details, but there are many, many levels of review when you're improving school district buildings. It goes all the way to the highest levels of the state for approval. And in COVID, there's been a lot of delays in that approval period. And so as we were planning our intentional integration, we knew that construction would be a challenge. And so we weren't going to be naive in trying to anticipate that there would be no impact of construction on this other important work of integration. So we shared, a lot of slides like this during the many town halls that we shared with our community. And on the left-hand side of your screen, where it says schools, of course, those are each of our schools, our elementary schools. And the bottom rung here are the district totals. The top of our slide here shows the demographics of the enrollment of each of our schools. So white, Black, Hispanic, Asian, American Indian, and so on. And even students who have a mixed race background. So if you go across from left to right, you can follow what the demographics of each school are when broken down per their ethnicities. And most importantly, you can see the socioeconomic balance of each school based on students who are self-identified as needing free and reduced lunch per that federal application process. So you can see that there are huge swings in the demographics of our schools, both in racial breakdowns as well as social economic breakdowns. And again, we shared this and we cut this data many different ways. This information is based on 2019-2020 school year. And so when you compare, again, each of the schools' demographics with the district's demographics running along the bottom, you can see that there are some huge swings. Some in particular, if you look at the number of Black students the percentage of Black students who attend Seth Boyden, the percentage of free and reduced lunch on average is about 15%, but you can see we have some schools as low as 3, some schools, one school as high as 42%. And so again, we showed this to our community and there was a lot of response that folks didn't know, right? Parents didn't go from school to school. Once they were assigned into school, they didn't have a lot of information around the other schools, about the other schools in our community. And even some of the folks who work in our district, we have our principals meetings in each schools. And it was the first time some of them have been in their neighboring schools to see that some of the differences in enrollment population were so stark. So we shared that with the community. And we also collected from the community what their concerns were from previous conversations around this important topic. And we acknowledged and we understood that if we were changing the school design, that we had to prepare for the anxiety and the angst that families and students and staff members would have. And so we shared with the community the information that we collected that, from parents, what is your, top concern around intentional integration in the future? And as you can see, here are the top 6 concerns. The first, of course, was, I want my kids to be in the same schools if at all possible. There were some families who had concerns around transportation. I'm going to be taking my kid across town and keeping them on the bus for, an exorbitant amount of time. There, of course, was concerns around students with special needs and some families already having relationships with an aftercare, an unofficial, informal aftercare provider, as well as the pacing of this implementation. Are we going to try and switch up the entire elementary population of our school district in 1 year? And what kind of chaos that could produce? And of course, keeping our goals of this work top of mind. Again, we cut this presentation down a lot because we know that your lens is trying to just understand the outcome. But what we shared a lot with our families was how beneficial this is for every student to go to school in a more diverse setting. So here's a quick review here. Beginning in September, this will be year 1. We know that our parents' number 1 concern was again us pacing this and not creating chaos. And so we have proposed to our Board of Education that we start this with a pilot approach for our kindergartners, that our kindergartners who are entering our school district in September would be the only students who will be impacted by our intentional integration initiative. That's the first really important point that we want you to take with you, is that this is an initiative that's piloting with our kindergartners. We're going to monitor this. We're going to do it very well. We're going to find where the hiccups are, if there are challenges. And then the following year, year 2, we would then apply our algorithm concept to our rising 6th graders who are exiting their elementary schools and the next round of kindergartners. Again, a very measured approach. So how are we going to do this? Our framework is based on the work that's been done in Berkeley, California. Berkeley, California used an algorithm approach to create micro neighborhoods within their municipality. And they used census data, the block census data that provided for parental education information, parental income information, as well as race. And this has been duplicated across the country because it doesn't target the student, it targets the micro neighborhoods that helps to provide balance and diversity to schools based on what that block census data provides. Additionally, we understand that students with IEPs who are special education or 504s or are English language learners, they would not be a part of our algorithm because they may have specialized programs that designate where they need to go to schools based on what their individual program calls for. So this is just a snapshot of Berkeley and what their formula is and what their zones are. And you can see that, again, I won't bore you by reading to you, but they were dividing into planning areas and using this information that we just spoke about. Each of these variables, they created an algorithm that allowed them to have a successful integration approach. So again, our algorithm, what's important for us, like, we're not Berkeley, we're not as big as Berkeley, we're different, but we're taking that concept and that framework. And so what else is important to our district? And we showed you again what the parental concerns were. There was a universal concern around being mindful of transportation, that we don't want these decisions to make our transportation costs increase tenfold. That, we have within our district many schools who residents live equal distance to. I may live within 2 miles of 3 different schools. So we can be very thoughtful in including proximity in the algorithm work so that we're not sending students across to the other towns or way across town unnecessarily, and we can still have the same desirable outcome. So again, proximity to schools is assisting us in assigning students and and it's assisting us with the decreasing the possibility of a huge escalation in transportation costs. So again, now middle schools won't be impacted by this possibly until September of 2022. You probably know we have 2 middle schools. We have Maplewood Middle, which is designated with MMS here. We have South Orange Middle, which is SOMS here. And what we're showing you here is a breakdown of the demographics between the middle schools against the entire district. And the reason that we did this is because there was a perception that our middle schools were very different. And what we want to show is that the demographics in our middle schools, by design, right? Middle schools are the result of elementary schools coming together. So by design, the disparity of our middle schools, both racially and socioeconomically, is much less than our elementary schools. There's definitely a difference in perception for some. If you look at this data, again, demographics at the top, the total for the district at the bottom, the percentages at the bottom, the numbers, the real numbers at the top, snapshot, you can see that they're not extremely different, though there are, of course, differences. And so what we're looking at for the year 2022 is a reasonable way to approach the rising 6th graders. We just wanted to share this for context. So just very briefly to share some of the highlights of our events that we had as we launched our intentional integration. And as we were able to bring together, as I said, many thousands of people to take part in these conversations. This is what I just explained to you, right? So this is just a high level slide. If you were going to take a snapshot of a slide to be able to remember some of the notes that you received from us, this is the slide to do that because it has a quick summary of all the work that we've done thus far. And talking about what's going to happen next year, hopefully 2022 for our 6th graders. And so here's a work plan. When we built this slide, we didn't know COVID was coming, right? But thankfully, we've still been able to follow this even in the middle of the COVID concerns. As you see with this big blue block here, this is when the Board of Education approved the plan that I'm sharing with you. And as this is occurring, right, we're still moving forward with our construction plans. We're still moving forward with putting forward all of our facility approvals to the state. And As you can see, moving forward, this is kind of where we are right now. We're in June of 2021, and we're preparing kindergarten placement letters to go out to these families to let them know what school they'll be attending in September. And you see here in September, that's the first class of our kindergartners who will be joining us. And again, facility updates and construction is moving forward. We're going to be breaking ground this summer on 4 of our sites. We have state approval, I believe now on 6 of our elementary schools, and we're having construction occur over the next probably 4 to 5 years in every building, school building in our district. So here's the latest information. This is fresh off the presses. About a month ago, the Board of Education in the community received an update on our algorithm process. The board supported us utilizing the consultant's recommendation of a 5% variance setting. This is, the type of data stuff that I nerd out on, but basically, the 5% variance setting means that there are going to be some cases where it's not an exact 33%, 33%, 33% breakdown of socioeconomics within our schools. But this allows for all those, for the real life aspects of this work. The board and the administration, we've worked to revisit and revise several policies that are impacted by this work. There are several pieces of our transportation policies and our transfer policies that would no longer be applicable because of this intentional integration initiative. We've also worked to prepare all of our bus routes, all of our transportation routes to be rebid so that we can make sure that our potential new routes for our kindergartners are covered in our intentional integration plan. I think that is already prepared to go out to be bid. And last but not least, the ALVS group is our consultants. They're national consultants. They've done this work for 30 to 40 years. All over the country, from Cambridge to Seattle to Berkeley. And so we've given them our incoming kindergartners and the current preschoolers, right? It sounds like the same group, but it's not the same group. Incoming kindergartners are those students who are not a part of our district right now. Preschool information are kids who are enrolled in our current preschool, Montrose or off-site. And we forwarded all that information to the ALVS group who have our algorithm prepared so that we can begin the finalization of the assignment of kindergartners to schools, and again, have that out to them very shortly. So we don't expect you to memorize all these things. As Ms. Eustace said, we're going to be recording this presentation. We are recording it. It'll be on our website. We also have a microsite within our website that is dedicated to this work. And so there's a link there. It's very easy to find. You can see if you follow the drop-down menu right there, there's a link for integration. If you go here on the bottom, there's also a direct click to integration, and you'll see this beautiful site here set up with all the information at a much deeper dive than I was able to share this evening. And that is it. I'm going to now stop sharing. At least I hope I am. All right, so I think we are now ready for any Q&A.
Thank you, Dr. Taylor. Right now, we're going to open it up to Q&A. So we would ask that if anyone has a question, that you can put your question into the chat functionality, and Dr. Taylor will respond to any questions that you may have. Also note that on the intentional integration microsite, there are a set of FAQs on there. So we do encourage you, if you do have families that you're working with that are moving into the district, to also share this short link with them. It would be helpful for them to understand the process in whole. So we're now opening it up to Q&A. If you have a question, you can put it into the chat function.
The chat, I need.
Excuse me, Carolyn?
Can you see the chat?
No, I don't.
Okay, we have a question from Mia Song. It says, will this presentation be available as a PDF to study?
Yes.
Okay. And from Susie Adamson, if a new family moves into the district over the summer with a fifth grader and a kindergartner will be there for consideration, will there be consideration for placing them in the same school?
Thank you, and it's great to hear from you, Susie. We miss you on the board. So that's been really a hot topic for us because if you look at the previous presentations, right, we spoke about this is a kindergarten pilot, right? That's important. That's how it was board approved. And so there were some families some interested parties who wanted to know, well, can we just apply this algorithm to every kid who's a newcomer to the district? And the answer is no after discussing it with our consultants because the the algorithm was processed using the data of available kindergartners. It wasn't processed for any other grade level. So we couldn't apply it to fifth graders. But if I'm a newcomer and I have a fifth grader and a kindergartner, the way that would happen is we would do all we could to keep them together. We know that we have one school that's a K2 school and a 3-5 with a 3-5 partner. That would be an example of when we could not keep them together because the destination doesn't allow that. But if at all possible, we would try to keep them together. So what the registrar and our consultant and our team would do is look at what the algorithm says for that kindergartner. It probably says that they could go to multiple schools. Now, which one of those sites also has an opening for a fifth grader? And they would try to work to match those two together to have the best outcome for that family, if at all possible.
Okay. And then Susie, again, hi, Susie asks, she says, not directly related to the integration plan, but would you please briefly speak to SOMSD's universal pre-K? What is the current capacity and process for registering pre-K students?
So I won't go deeply into that because I don't want to go off topic, but I can tell you that we're really excited that we share with the board committees that we were able to allow for all students who apply were able to get into the pre-K program for next year, I believe. We were able to seat everyone who made themselves available with interest, and there's all kind of links on our websites for the pre-K processing. But unlike previous years where we had to have lotteries and unfortunately wait lists and had to even deny a few people, we're able to so far allow all who were interested to be placed into our program. And again, remembering for your clients that Montrose is our pre-K site in district, but we have many satellite sites and partnerships that also are quasi-district placements.
Okay. And then Susie says, sorry if you already addressed this, but what is the current plan for making all of the schools K5?
So great question. That's linked to construction, right? So in order for us to make every school K5, that means that Jefferson and Marshall will both have to be prepared to serve K5. It probably is 2 years away because the construction will have to be pretty close to complete for those schools, and that would be a reset for those school populations to have the K2 3-5 to become two different K5. So you're probably a couple of years away because it would have to be almost a completion of the construction for both buildings.
Okay. She says, thank you so much for hosting this event for us.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming.
I don't see any other questions.
Well, that means we did a great job. So, Ms. Eustace, if
Mr. Boy says, yes, you did.
you just want to get away for the summertime, I understand. It's a summer evening. Well, no, thank you, Ms. Moore and Ms. Eustace and Mr. Bonds. Mr. Bonds is actually ill today. They got off his sick bed to help us make sure we got those tech problems taken care of. If you have any questions, you know where to send them, and we'll have this up for you. And for any of your colleagues who couldn't make it, you can just send them right to those links. Anything else?
All right, everyone, have a good night. Like Dr. Taylor shared, you all registered for the event, so we'll follow up with an email with a link to this as well as a PDF of the presentation to you all. And I also want to thank Susie, who helped me to get the word out to her network of realtors. It was very much appreciated. Have a great night, everyone. And once again, thank you for being with us.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.